1 2 1 2. Microphone check, microphone check. What's up, world?
Never seen a truer color in the sewers, gutters, who was cut us loose and who was losing trust.
It's good to see you,
Just assume they want
even
us
though
to
I can't see
resume
you.
Satan, throw us in the face of danger.
I hope that you're ready for an extremely fun lockdown session, and that you're not basically losing it as we're still immured in our houses, being gaslit by government, being sent out to work in offices that are unsafe. Enjoy this track and grab a cup of tea. I'll be back shortly.
Heads in investments,
Rewind.
credit bonds, better lives away, hegemon, bowed heads. Hey, 1 2 1. Never seen a truer color in the sewers, gutters, who was cut us loose and who was losing trust. Just assume they want us to resume with Satan, throw us in the face of danger while remunerating. Your stable genius, his brain's a penis. Your deep thinker's a bleach drinker. No way, serious. Brexit flag and exit planning while we're still on stretchers hanging, ventilators dragging, Valentine's addressed to mammon. Foreigner despising, pocket lining, profit hiking, and lobotomizing anyone who prophesied. Heads in investments, credit bonds, better lives away, hegemon, bowed heads before the hegemon. Lives wasted, discarded for blind faith in the market. In a car wreckage looking for ways to restart it. Stigmatized, ill-equipped, the sick and dying, deaf to the desperate herd, immunized. Sycophants, sick of answers, sick of Deliveroo, living, sitting in taxis, plan to leave us sicker with the vaccine. Power praising, craving, cowards counterclaiming, thrown us in the overcrowded housing, leaves a sour tasting. Protected sectors, never in protective vests and medics, and just sent them in with empty gestures. Fake preaching, labeling, weaponizing, secret hate speech and racist feeding. Hoarding trinkets, gorging, misreporting, inconvenience, that's ignoring, we can see it all recorded. Opportunists jacking prices, casualties ain't stacked up right. Wait, the true colors might be black and white. Messenger shooting, deflecting questions, wedded to weapons and fuel, and consider the few deaths a solution.
Woo! I hope you all locked in and that my buffer speed is working smoothly for you. And that I said you haven't had too much of a crazy week. But in case you don't know, in case I haven't talked about it enough, I'm certainly going to be talking about it more over the next 4 weeks. I've been recording a festival, an online music festival. I know a lot of the people who listen to this and lock into this lockdown session group have already got some tickets and stuff, but do spread the word, let people know. We're going to be staging an online festival which commemorates and looks at some detail at the history of race riots in 1919. In fact, 1919, 1920, and 1921 all saw ferocious race riots right across the United Kingdom. And of course, at this moment, it's sort of being presented as a new thing, thrust upon British identity, black people and multiculturalism, changing our ideals, our kind of being a code word for just white people. But the fact of the matter is Britain has been incredibly diverse, both in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of outward, different narratives, and it's time that we sort of look at that in some detail. So I'm staging an online festival. There's going to be performances, both including dance and music, some really notable as well as up-and-coming jazz musicians. And I've been in Liverpool, Hull, Salford, Cardiff, Newport, and London over the past couple of weeks, gathering information, gathering intel. So I'll be breaking down some of that throughout today's show, but also something that's happened, I'm sure, for lots of you, if you're baking soda bread at home or walking the streets with headphones in or driving, as I have been, and listening to the radio, listening to the mainstream media, as the term goes, the MMS. And sorry, I'm just getting texts. Note to self, people, beloved friends and fans, please don't text me while I'm streaming. But where was I? There will be certainly a lot more interesting information to unpack about the parallels between 1919 and all of the sort of racism that's happening now. And as I said, I was about to say, I'm feeling really gaslit as you're listening to the radio and the news. They're basically saying stuff that you think, is anyone else listening to this? Is anybody else struck by the level of ignorance and stupidness that we're encountering? So I guess I'll start there. Apologies if anyone who've got young people listening, like really young people listening to this show and don't want any profanity. Here's a little health warning. I was driving and my reactions are super visceral. I'm going to try and edit out the curse words. But sometimes you just listen to the radio and you get so vexed, you have to pull over, swear at the top of your lungs and record it. So here we go. I think I found it. Here we go. What?
As well, we should be
Oh,
approach is that it really does mark a leap away, certainly in terms of argument.
So here's a little background. They're talking about the shape of Boris Johnson's new government, the sort of idealism, Johnsonism, if anything like that exists. And of course, to anyone with basically two brain cells to rub together, you realize that a lot of the signature policies of Johnsonism, spending more, were inherited from Jeremy Corbyn and the need to boost the state. He was stealing all of Labour's clothes, as they put it, parking tanks on Labour's lawn. And that seems to have been incredibly and swiftly forgotten. So I'll play this little excerpt and hopefully you can hear with me what makes me so incensed. So incensed that I had to avoid a road accident, pull over and record this for my own delectation.
Thatcherism. The framing of the budget before they knew how serious the virus was Keynesian. We're going
back to Keynes, John Maynard Keynes and
to borrow and
but not acknowledging the obvious elephant in the room, which is that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell pushed the entire debate on spending and investing to the left.
and grow the economy in a way that you would not have heard George Osborne utter such words, and certainly not in the Thatcher era. Is this a real mark, do you think, towards a very different kind of approach to the economy and the state from the Johnson-led Tory party?
The interview was fine. I was driving over a hill at about that point. But what happened next made me, as you can see, have to pull into a random cul-de-sac in Liverpool. Sorry if I filmed your house. I can't obscure your number plates and stuff. This is nothing significant about this road, except for the fact I had to pull in there. Otherwise, if I carried on driving listening to this claptrap, I would have crashed into a wall.
You can sum it up in Boris Johnson's own phrase, which is that he wants to be a Brexity Hezza. And that means...
Like, seriously, what does that Brexity Hezza? It's like they think we're 5 years old.
In a post-Brexit world, he wants to intervene before breakfast, lunch and tea in the state, in the economy, in a way that no Tory has in recent years dreamed of doing.
So they're just going to flagrantly lie to us now and make out that Boris Johnson is some spend crazy, investing, quasi-left-wing new break with Toryism when we haven't seen anything practical except the death of upwards of 50,000 people.
He's harking back actually to the pragmatism of the 1950s of the Tories and before that. But I think that's what was really fascinating about Dominic Cummings that you just talked about. Cummings gets the fact that the British public had this problem with the Tories. The problem was they didn't really love the NHS and they weren't really like us. They didn't understand.
I mean, the British people have this problem. You mean that the Tories have been plundering the NHS since clandestine moves by Oliver Letwin under Thatcher in that period in the 80s? They've been attempting to privatise the NHS for nigh on 40 years. That's what ordinary people have a problem with.
What our lives were like. Now, that key moment when Boris Johnson was in hospital earlier this year,
this was the bit.
Politically vaccinated him against those charges. Boris Johnson could say, boy, do I know it. And he came out again with a lovely bit of poetry. The NHS is the beating heart of this country, powered by love, he said.
Oh my goodness. The NHS is the beating heart of the country, powered by love. I mean, if this is what passes for politics, there's empty platitudes and poetry as it's referred to by our leading broadcaster, the BBC, I don't know where we're going. I really don't.
And when he came off out of the intensive care. And that's what's driven the rest of his public policy, which is he's putting the NHS, just as he did in the general election, right at the heart of the government policy. And
how much flagrant lying are we going to tolerate? He put the NHS front and centre of his campaign. No, he didn't. He hid a phone from a journalist asking him about why children were sleeping on the floor of the NHS. And I guess they hope that we've all got collective amnesia, some bout of collective ignorance that means that we're unable to remember what happened merely 7-8 months ago. So beware the lies, the level. I think this is verging on an assault on the mind. That's all I can put it as.
And going on to say, actually, well, we can use the state to intervene in various other areas as well, and we shouldn't be afraid of doing it. And that's why I think, ultimately, he will be judged on whether or not he's actually lived up to that mantra of his of levelling up. It's quite a task he's set himself.
So here we go. That's nation's leading broadcaster, the British Broadcasting Corporation. Some point on a Saturday afternoon, I can't remember the presenters' names, but it certainly shifted my opinion and views of the media quite radically. I'd normally be quite keen and eager to fact check and name and cite all the journalists responsible. I just think anybody who was speaking on this program, and there are some notable, memorable names and voices, have utterly discredited themselves just by preparing to tell such barefaced lies. And that, I think, is something that's quite worrying going forward. If you look at the average content of a Helen Whatley or a Matt Hancock interview, and this goes back to Nicky Morgan in the last general election, they're flagrantly lying, saying such ridiculous things. They might as well come out and say, we helped Boris Johnson build red buses, because it's playing with our level of trust and belief in the political system and the media in general. I think that's what it's designed to do. But I'm gonna play some music, because that's always fun. Yeah, I hope you dig it. I don't know what tune I'm gonna play right yet, but maybe something I was messing around with before. This is good. Check it. Please, as always, let me know in your comments if the volume is low or anything like that. If you certainly can't hear anything I'm saying, it's always good to know. Big love out there. My computer is doing right now. We're gonna get down. Check it out. I hope you're ready. One, two, three, four. I like that, Feeling in the go-go mood. Let's pick the vibe up. Check. Huh. Check it out. 1, 2. Where the praise to be. Right now in the comment section, there's only like a few people watching me. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so yeah, we're gonna drop it. If you got some knowledge and you want to drop it, don't forget to leave some remarks in the comments. Check it out. I naturally feel like I'm in 1986 when I hear a funky go-go beat like this. 1, 2, y'all. 3, 4, y'all. I hope everybody's having great fun, y'all. Check it out, y'all. Even if you test the times, we're gonna kick some heavy rhymes. 1, 2, 1, Sheesh. I hope you're still out there enjoying yourselves. Check it out. Ha 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 ha. Which camera to use? It's bewildering. Yeah. Thank you so much to those of you who have been tuning in every week. And of course, sharing the videos, letting other people know so that they can keep abreast of everything, obviously, that I'm talking about. But hopefully also connecting lots and lots of different people
Again, if you're not tuning into this for the first time, you'll probably be aware that I had the opportunity to create some music for a fantastic collaborator of mine, and somebody's putting together a film. So the incredible choreographer, MC, poet, basically Renaissance man, John Z D, has released a film, which is certainly a response of sorts to everything that's happening with Black Lives Matter, and a specific focus on the violence meted out to Black women. It's called We Want Our Bodies Back, and based on a Jessica Care Moore poem. It's well worth checking out. I'm certainly going to leave some links afterwards in the description box on YouTube, and I'll certainly leave some links in the comments on Facebook if that's where you're watching right now. It's just a really moving work, and I haven't even really taken the full time to engage with it, because it's not the sort of piece that you just stick on while you're doing something else and have one in the background. It's very arresting, I think is a great word to describe it. I'm going to play just 10 seconds of the music and poetry from Jessica Care Moore, but direct you absolutely to the Breaking Convention website, anything John Z D's got on social media, so you can get a chance to see this film in its full entirety. Ben Williams, the filmmaker, and everybody involved in that project is well worth checking out. So with no further ado, I'm going to play you a little excerpt. Oh, come on, there we go.
We want our bodies back. We want our bodies back. If Black women could be cut down, no, removed gently from American terrorism, who would break our fall? Which direction will we travel to feel safe? Wild is the wind. If we could turn in this skin, these sharpened bones, this brain full of power and history, who would we resemble? Invisible doesn't come in black. How many nervous breakdowns? How many funeral black dresses? How many fibroids? How many nooses? How many of our bodies must be raped, cut into pieces, thrown inside garbage bags, buried? How many of us blossom a beautiful tree of life and pray their pride isn't cut down the middle, reduced to trunks, where a close friend doesn't die, climbing their limbs, attempting to simply grow outside this pretty soil they were planted? I put a spell on you.
That's all you're getting. You're going to have to go see the full film. And of course, as I said, I'll put some links in the description and stuff afterwards. But it's great that this conversation is continuing. For those people who erroneously think this is a BLM moment, merely a blip, and something you can just fix with a couple of hashtags and changing your profiles on social media to a black square, you're sorely mistaken. If anything, I also think the murders of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd are, believe it or not, whilst they are prime injustices, are symptomatic of the same disease that's gotten us where we are with COVID and Corona. It feels like there's no other way to say this. White supremacy is its own disease, is its own pathology, which not only kills black people, innocent black people, it also immiserates and impoverishes the white people it's supposed to benefit, because it's gifted us political systems like that which we have in Brazil, that which we have in the United States, and that which we've got in the United Kingdom. And yes, Britain and England are the birthplace of international racism. I ain't even got time in this week's episode, but if you want to hear more, certainly more enlightening and hopefully edifying conversations, click onto the online festival ticket link, as you can see, soweto-kinch.com/Black Peril 2020. I'm going to be having these sorts of in-depth conversations with the likes of Kehinde Andrews, Low Key, rapper, raconteur, just an incredible human being. Nicholas Payton in New Orleans and Jason Moran also in the States. So it's going to be a fascinating opportunity to chop stuff up. Hopefully in a real sort of safe space where we're not going to be assailed by Twitter trolls. We're not going to be bullied off of the air by any sort of Twitter outrage mob. But we can also have a chance to talk about some controversial subjects in a safe and enlightening, hopefully educative way. So that's what's going to be happening. And on that tip, I'm going to play you a little clip from a much longer and more detailed interview that I was lucky enough to have with two incredible inhabitants of Cardiff, or inhabitants of Wales, in fact. The first is Jamie Baker, a historian who I'm fascinated with. He's also been blogging on YouTube and produced a number of podcasts specifically looking at this history of racial tension, race riots in Wales and the wider UK in 1919. So obviously we have a kindred historical interest there. He grew up in East London and has got relatives, certainly maternal ancestors going all the way back in Wales. So he's really keen to present the fact that, you know, the story of blackness or a relationship with Black Britain goes well before the Windrush. And in fact, he has to acknowledge the white people that raised him as well as equally British. So this is a British story, not just to be ghettoized and tucked into the Black history box. Gaynor Legal is an incredible human being who's a resident of Tiger Bay, this part of Cardiff with this polyglot, really interesting history. And it's just already interesting when you see a woman, a fairly senior woman, still looking radiant and beautiful with grey, silvery, beautiful hair, but with a thick Welsh accent, whereas I normally expect a West Indian or West African accent to come out of a black woman above a certain age. The fact that she has been in Wales her whole life, and in fact, her grandfather is the one that came from Jamaica to Wales, means that there is this much longer lineage of a black presence in Britain, and certainly one that goes back, in her case, to the 19th century, that's well worth excavating, looking at, and taking seriously. So I'm going to play you a little bit of this much more in-depth and wider interview with both Gaynor Legal and Jamie Baker. If I can find it, there we go. It's not too late. I think it's a good look, though.
No.
Yeah, no.
I like my hair, but not the brow, not the eyebrows. You know?
Yes, as you can see, we were discussing the merits and demerits of becoming a silver fox. I'm getting grey. I think it's very fetching.
There were already second generation black people there in 1919. And when the riots...
stuff to get in, the Rush, the generation, and those marauding Irish gangs and stuff to get in, there was a level of protection and solidarity within that community at a certain point that I'm really interested in. And the second question, well, I'll ask the second question second.
So just a bit of background, as you can see, this isn't an edited video. I had asked Gaynor to describe the culture, the atmosphere in Tiger Bay, the specific part of Cardiff, in 1919, just over 100 years ago, as I'd heard reports of a level of cohesion and solidarity that surprised me. So here we go.
Okay, so that's that. Okay, so Tiger Bay was a small area populated by the arguably the longest settled black community in Britain. There were already second generation black people there in 1919. And when the riots started, the men from here armed themselves and they barricaded the top of the bridge on Bute Street and the bridge coming in Canal Parade so that the people...
So that's actually a bridge that she's referencing at the top of Bute Street that we did some performing in, and in fact I'd come and visited the previous site visit too. And it certainly feels like it's got a history, even though there's new council builds and new buildings all around it that have very consciously erased that black and working class history. You still get the sense that there was a community and certainly something worth protecting around this bridge in Bute Street.
Couldn't get in Tiger Bay. So it was a safe haven for people, which is why I said earlier, some families from Barry came here. The odd families, there were a couple of black families that live in Grangetown, they headed here because they knew they...
Now that's fascinating, you know, smaller towns, and we went to Newport, we didn't get to Barry, but the history of these smaller mining towns, certainly at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, they weren't small towns, they were new cities, and in fact, bereft of any sort of local, large population, most of the people that moved to Barry came from somewhere else. Shropshire, I was told, other parts of the country. And there were a lot of, as we were discussing, Barry families which were black. People who come from Barbados, from Jamaica, from West Africa, all different countries, and Lascar communities. Lascar was a term which just lumped together all Somali, Arab, and Indian immigrants into that generic term. But, you know, these Barry families would have been fiercely protective and would have been aware, as she's described, of racial tension in other cities and would have known where they've been best protected and where they would have found kindred spirits. It's also a good time to introduce the fact that the term race riots is really inaccurate in describing what was happening 100 years ago to black people, black families, and black properties. Much like Tulsa, it was far less of a race riot and more of a racial massacre, where black people were bullied, harassed, and attacked just for walking down the street or having property or dressing well. And that's something really to bear in mind. Carry on, Gaynor.
Safe here. And the men patrolled, they took it in turns and patrolled the area. And one of the stories I grew up with, about my grandmother had dementia near the end of her life. So every night she'd say, are we ready? Have you got the stones? Have you got the bricks? Have you got the this? And they used to bring bricks and stones upstairs. So if they broke through the door, the front door, they could throw it down on them. And they tied knives to the end of the soothing brushes.
I mean, just we take a little pause here. A serious thing that 100 years ago was a black community in Britain, in Wales, that not only could defend itself, they probably would have served in the First World War, many of them, but had a sense of pride and Welsh identity that is really surprising, and it shouldn't be. You know, these were people who would have had Welsh accents. They were second generation immigrants, if you like, and the idea of a black Welsh identity, a polyglot identity, has been systematically rubbed out. Yes, of course, we have Gaynor as evidence. We've got Colin Jackson, we've got, you know, Shirley Bassey, etc., that point to a much longer relationship that Wales has with blackness. But I think it's really important to shed light on these forgotten narratives that really still surprise me, that really leap out of the page.
Because there'd been incidents where white women with their black children had been assaulted and the children thrown out of the pram when they went into town.
Now that in itself is also fascinating. This period of history seems to be at once the birth of the Karen. You know, white women were weaponizing their whiteness to accuse black men of rape or whistling at them. And of course, this led to lynchings and deportations. However, it was also a time that if white women chose to cross the color line and marry, certainly have children with a black man, they could expect to be ostracized, beaten, stripped naked, and paraded in the streets, having their babies attacked, as Gaynor is describing. And that dichotomy to me is really interesting. It's certainly not a neutral choice.
So Bute Town was well guarded. There were all the incidents that took place. I said Bute Town was well guarded. There was no
Tiger Bay.
Tiger Bay. And
it's a little controversy. Do they use Bute Town, the name conferred after the fourth Viscount or something of Bute, lent her name, just a wealthy investor, or Tiger Bay, which is certainly the more popular name that the residents of that part of Cardiff called it themselves.
The major incidents all took place outside of Tiger Bay, near the town. And funny enough, one of the people we work with now is the great-grandson of a man called Ali Sattar, who ran a cafe in a boarding house, and that was wrecked and set on fire during the race riots.
All right, I ain't gonna show you no more. If you want to see the full, of course, edited and curated interviews and discussions around them, be sure, of course, to go to the website and purchase a ticket. It's also a great way to support a new way of making and staging music. I'm really blessed to have been given a small tranche of funding, but also we're gonna need to get some income to pay these musicians and artists and so forth that have done such an incredible job and really remunerate their efforts. But if this works as a model, I'm really going to feel hugely vindicated and excited about new ways to reach new audiences in the future. So in any way that you can, please do support, either by sharing information about the festival, or of course buying a ticket so you can be part of these more in-depth conversations. But yeah, the things I find fascinating about both Gaynor and Jamie's perspective is that it's a counter-narrative to the one that black people all arrived on a boat called the Windrush in 1947, and there was no contact with Britishness and this convergence of blackness and Britishness before that point. It's really important that we start to crumble some of these national myths that we have, because Britain has been a diverse country grappling with the idea of black identity for a very long time. Which seems like a perfect spot for some music. If you've got any questions and comments, do drop them in using the ecamm thing. Of course, I'd like to make this show as interactive as possible, and of course the festival coming up as interactive as possible. So let's keep this community building. That's for sure. What am I going to do next? Let's play this tune. In fact, check.
Check it out. 2 times. Woo. Check it out. 3 times. All these people in the place to be. I hope you are feeling all the joy and glee. 1, 2. We'll take a quick pause. I'm here spitting in the booth. I really just need a sip of juice. We'll pull it. It's a sip from the NutriBullet, and it feels super healthy. We got each other, so we really all are wealthy. I think about that be the truth.
I'm looking for some suggestions before I hit the booth. Yeah, sitting page. I see people here with the triple flames. I hope you're all feeling love, because these ideas, they come from above and they connect us all in some virtual hug. Yeah! I hope you are still with me and having fun out there. Please do drop some comments in. As I said, it gives me something to work with when it comes to freestyling and all of that sort of good stuff. But there's only really one other thing I want to draw attention to in terms of current affairs, and that is the treatment meted out to, I mean, it's really shocking footage, but the treatment meted out to Mr. Rashid Abbasi, that's his name, Rashid. And yeah, a family who were losing a 6-year-old child, and they were told she only had an hour to live, were physically manhandled. The shocking part is that both of them were consultants, were doctors, were qualified medical staff and had worked in the NHS for many years. And the fact that they were abused so openly and so publicly, I think again is part of this assault on empathy. I spoke a little about the 12-year-old black boy that had been held up at police gunpoint for having a toy gun. And in talking about that with some friends as well, I noticed their reactions, their perspectives were very much, well, the mother shouldn't have had a gun. What is a 12-year-old doing with a toy gun in the first place? Well, they must have done something wrong. Don't you know what day and age this is? And it's a whittling away of basic human empathy. The first impulse should be, that's a 12-year-old boy with a gun pointed at their head. And the same impulse should have been here, whereas a grieving father wanting to spend the last hours, the last minutes with their daughter, as the mother called out, where's the compassion? There seems to be a real conscious eroding of empathy at this particular moment in our national dialogue, and I think it's deliberate. The more we have links of camaraderie and the more that we are able to empathize with people who don't look like us, who don't necessarily speak our language, but are still part of this British body politic, is the quicker I think that we'll get over the worst aspects of the coronavirus and its impact on the economy. If we go down this tack, which I believe the government is fast forwarding us down, oh, well, they're just Eastern Europeans, they're not the same. Oh, well, Leicester, you know, there are lots of Asians. Oh, well, Eid Mubarak. Oh, well, they're just Black Lives Matter protesters. Then it's the continued refraction, the continued fragmentation of British identity, British people. And of course, the only way, from my studies of history, is down from there. It could be really quite terrifying unless we work collectively to shift this national narrative away from division and towards instead unity. On that tip, I was trying to get some more clips and stuff sorted out, but it didn't quite edit, you know what I mean, in time. So I'm going to play some unedited clips from our time in Newport and in Cardiff. That all happened this week. So I'm going to play you a little clip from that. This performance featured, it was just myself and an incredible vocalist who's been a good friend of mine for quite some time. Been on albums, and he's just an incredible talent and mind in general, Francis Mott. So this is another day, us doing little bits. Another festival day. The street right here is Rupera Street, where it was a centre of race riots 100 years ago, or a race massacre, as it's better put, where people from surrounding cities had driven down and looked to attack both black and Chinese families. And there were gangs of over 1,000 looking for black people, as I said, to attack. Stage.
Sacrifices in vain, betrayed, closed in, yet still here, ain't broken, still reminded, death assigned us, new webs of lies and no deception blind us.
As you can see, there's just some rough footage, it's not even fully representative yet. We're having quite a fun with some local residents, kids in the area watching and participating. And Francis and I had some great fun laying down some duets around this project.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Still here
to bringing all of this together, and the words he was singing there, still here, ain't broken. You know, that in itself, the fact that we're performing in all of these historic sites where I guess we were supposed to have been genocided or exterminated from, we're still here. We're still playing music and still British. You know what I mean? I believe I might have a comment. Ooh, I heard the clicking sound. Come on, ecamm, work with me. Mr. Mott, indeed. Big up Francis. Sometimes he's a guest and tuning into these sessions and stuff as well, but one of Birmingham's finest, most talented individuals I can think of. So I'm so glad to have him as part of this project. And similarly, in Cardiff, I was with the incredibly talented group of people. I'm going to try and find a clip here that works. So what you have is us here exploring mento and folk West Indian rhythms, but it features Sonia Konate, French, West African influenced and certainly incredible musician in her own right, and Nathaniel Cross, trombonist, great musician who I've known for maybe about 10 years now already. And so, yeah, we've all taken quite a bit of time to internalize this musical history. And a dancer called Stefano Ade, who's been as part of this project since its very inception, and joined us for the album launch back last November.
Yeah, it's just that vibe. We're gonna
Jeez. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope it whets your appetites to hear more. But yeah, there'll be a lot of dance, a lot of different dynamics that we're exploring throughout this festival. And the 5 stages worth mentioning, or the 5 cities that we're visiting, are Salford, just outside Manchester, Liverpool, Hull, Newport, Cardiff, and London. Now, London and Liverpool might not be that surprising as epicenters of race riots, but there were other cities that we're not visiting along this trip. South Shields and Glasgow, any large port in the United Kingdom at the time would have had certainly a polyglot, cosmopolitan sort of population. So it shouldn't, on the one hand, be a surprise to us that there were black people in these places. But I think that their presence has been so systematically whitewashed, it is still a surprise. And something that Jamie Baker said in our interview was that, particularly in Cardiff, they wanted to erase all the evidence of the people that built the wealth of that city. That is the Chinese, the Lascar, the Black, the Arab, West African and West Indian communities that produced all of that labor, did all that labor and made all that wealth for Cardiff possible. And it's the same right across the city. Something that constantly hit us and affected us as performers is how often any emblems or any tokens of the black presence are tucked out of sight, almost rendered invisible, deliberately invisible, at the same time as we're having this very public debate about statues and should we honor these historical figures, or is it rewriting history to take statues down? Each of these thoroughly dishonorable white men who've been lauded and erected on plinths and stuck up on statues, we have to strain our neck to look up at as though they're to be venerated and honored. Conversely, the black presence, where it's even acknowledged at all, is tucked away out of sight and out of mind. And I think that's quite a dangerous thing for us as an entire society, not just us as black descendants, melanated descendants here in Britain. So, you know, I'd encourage you, exhort you to be involved in this discussion and debate, because I think it's going to be edifying and thought-provoking in lots and lots of ways. But yeah, I've been talking and not playing so much. It's going to be a shorter stream. As I said, I'm going to be getting other smidgens and excerpts of performances to share with you online. Do keep tuned, keep an ear plugged in here to this lockdown session and others like it. And I'm also going to be sharing, hopefully, festivals and projects from kindred creatives such as John Z. D, Cleveland Watkis, Jazz Refreshed, and hopefully just really trying to bring a groundswell of a new audience that wants to check out each other's work even in this really difficult time of COVID lockdown. All aboard the train towards destination second spike. But on a more cheery note, let's play some music. One of my favorite beats. Check it. Let's go. We continue with the show. One step. Take it up again. Drop. My people, all of you tuned into the show, thank you so much for being a part of this journey again. It's worth saying I'm pretty knackered after this incredible trip I've had around the country, but there is going to be a whole lot more incredible stories to share, incredible performances to share over the coming weeks. I'll even have a bit more time to shave and prepare clips and stuff for the coming weeks on lockdown. So I will be here Remember to tune in. I'll be here every Monday, 5 p.m., telling the world about all the things that are going on in my crazy mind, but also Black Peril 2020, all the additions we're making to it, and it's going to be exciting, so do join us for that. Until this time, the same time next week, next Monday, take care of yourselves, and hope to see you all again in approximately 7 days. God bless you. Yeah.